And we are live. I think we're live.
I believe we are.
Very good. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Popoiden.
And I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions. This is the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. And this is episode 4.
Yes, where we discuss the Democrats falling flat on their face and the cops, yet again, getting away with murder.
Getting away with murder. That's not hyperbolic at all.
Not at all.
Anyway, so let's... There's a lot going on in the news right now. There's a lot that's of interest. There's the constant turmoil, the constant Trump-Russia scandal. Are we going to war? All these things are happening. We're going to sort of boil down on two, I think, key issues that we wanted to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive on. The first of which is the fact that the Democrats are failing horribly in special elections this year.
Well, yeah, by the tune of 6 points, apparently, in Georgia, where our man Ossoff ran against Handel, or Handel, however.
I think it's I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll say it's Handel. In the Georgia special election, it was sort of like the Atlanta area, north of Atlanta, this suburban area.
Yes, that is traditionally Republican.
Yeah, they've traditionally held that point. But this was the most expensive campaign special election, like in the history of the United States.
And this is what I've heard. Yeah, well, not just special election. I thought it was the most expensive congressional, House campaign.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So
not just special elections, but period. And I've heard conflicting figures across the board, from 25 to 35 million spent by Democrats alone.
Yeah, I heard a figure somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 million total, which you could say there was 25, half dozen of one,
sure.
And 60 the other.
Well,
but in either case, tons of money have been thrown into this thing. The Republicans did win. It was 53-47. Handel won. Handel is a Republican. The only thing I know about her is that she is a religious bigot. I don't have anything nicer to say.
That's a nice.
That's all I get. And this is part of the problem. As it gets, huh? Because let's get into this. Because this is part of the problem that all people like me, the raging left wingers, know is that she is essentially anti-LGBT.
Mm-hmm.
Nasty woman, I want to call her. Not really nasty woman.
In all fairness, you should probably regurgitate that because it worked really well, apparently, in the 2016
Yeah, it did work. Maybe we should have played that one.
Yeah, I mean...
But the fact is we didn't. We, as in other Democrats, too, include myself, sure, why not? I'll bite that bullet. And we didn't, I guess, have a very good message, or not good enough. Or do we want to attribute it to, fraudulent campaign tactics?
I mean,
or do we want to, or do we want to call it gerrymandering? What do we want to do?
Can I ask you, and I don't know if you know this, because I really didn't follow this election too hard. I did, at least as far as numbers go, because, it was the first major battleground after Trump was elected, and let's see if the Democrats can carry their weight or do what they do. But the question is, what did Ossoff run on in the sense of, how did he differentiate from, I guess, Hillary's message in 2016, the Democratic message in 2016?
No, I think that's a great question, and I think he didn't do enough. First of all, the guy's 30 years old. He just barely qualified for office. He's a kid, basically.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to...
I'm 30.
Yeah, part of me that wants to, rah, for Democrats is saying, he's just a young kid. He's trying, good for him. He'll be back. All this other stuff. The reality is, he still lost. We came closer. We closed the gap. We made a tight race. All this stuff.
Sure.
First of all, 6 points. It wasn't that tight. It was only as tight as Montana.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 points is
a BBC reporter.
And the question there arises is the polls all had him winning handily. Again. We're familiar with the polls anymore. Yeah, we're familiar with the polls.
Yeah, 538. What's the guy's name?
Nate Silver is my
Silver.
Boy. Nate, still love you. Still throwing it out there.
You frustrate me now.
No, I don't think it's your fault, man. That's a whole other story we can talk about a different time. But I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it has a lot to do with exit polls and what people are willing to admit they're doing.
Yeah. Is it...
I mean, you have
Is it the look over your shoulder effect?
Well,
I wonder. I don't want to admit to what I just did.
Everything
I'm
you do,
make sure I'm in pleasant company before I tell the racist joke.
As far as demographics go in general, you have this like self-reporting bias where, informally, for example, we see 2/3 of the country will admit to at least once having smoked marijuana. But when it comes to actually more formal polls, that number drops drastically. The same thing with homosexuality in the U.S. Census and people who self-report. The numbers are usually somewhere around 10% for the LGBT community.
Sure.
And when it comes to the U.S. Census, apparently it's
like 4?
Just slightly over 1%.
Only one, really?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's a huge
my understanding is normally that, I know this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, normally hits between 4 and 8% realistically.
Exactly.
So,
this is what I'm saying, is that when your numbers are 10% on the informal end and 1.5 or 1.7% on the actual formal government census, is the question is, do homosexuals feel marginalized enough to be worried about reporting those numbers to the government officially? I mean,
sure. So, but you're saying the same thing by extension. People who are going to vote,
and right? I think just in general, when you get exit polls or when you get any kind of polling, especially with the Trump election in 2016, how many people really wanted to admit when they were on the fence, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump?
Right, because you have to catch flack. And that was it had a chilling effect. I think a very effective chilling effect on me voting for Hillary. I've issued several mea culpas at this point, but going, oh, you voted for her, and wanting to have to put up with that for the next 4 years, presuming she had won, which was of course a terrible miscalculation on my point.
Yeah, well, mine too. And honestly, I'm conservative, and I never saw that coming. I really thought Hillary was right,
because no one wants to say, because as soon as you say, oh, I voted for. Oh, you voted for the pussy grabber, and nobody wants to admit to that. So, and coming back to Georgia here, is that the same thing? Is Handel enough of an odious person, or people just are not going to want to report on that beforehand? It's something. I mean, there were. Okay, I'm going to say. I
don't know if it's a question of necessarily if Handel is necessarily that odious, but you have to look back again at our new favorite thing of attack ads. I mean, you really got to bring it back to that. What message can you sell to the voting populace, and what does that mean? In the sense of, Ossoff was not a great candidate. Young. You got video of him acting a drunken goddamn fool in college.
I've never even seen it. I didn't follow this. I got to admit, I didn't follow this close enough.
It was like Star Wars nerd jokes, and I mean, the kind of shit that I did in college.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, just stupid shit.
Unelectable, by the way. But
we'll see about that one day, maybe.
I hope so.
I hope that clip right there. I hope that clip right there is played. And I'm saying it now. So and then you win. And if someone throws that out there like as an attack ad against me, that's like unelectable, I'm like, we'll see about that. And then I get to play right afterwards. I'm obviously fucking joking.
Seriously, I hope you run for something because you're a decent, reasonable person. But anyway, that aside.
So, but that.
So awesome. I know almost nothing about him. I knew he had a D next to his name.
30.
Pardon the identity politics.
Well, sure, but I mean that plays
we
a
just
large portion.
We just want to turn seats.
But you got to talk about the people who are in between, and the small amount of the majority shift that goes in your favor or doesn't. Because I mean, let's be honest, the people on the fringe, you got them with the letter by your name.
Yeah.
What you need to convince are the people who are more towards the middle. And so with AllSoph, you've got a guy who moved away for college and who lived in a district nearby, but either way, did not live in his own district that he was running for.
Can I address that?
Could not vote in that district.
Could I address that quickly?
Sure.
Because I've heard the Republicans very much painted him as a carpetbagger. That he was. The reality is that he grew up in the area.
That's bullshit.
He moved out of that voting district so he could go live by his fiance, in recent years.
My understanding was that he moved out of that district to go to school, where he met his fiance, where she was continuing school. Yeah, he stayed for her. Whatever. He lives in a district nearby. Blah 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 blah.
But it's not like he was disconnected from the area.
Still points to make.
But
disingenuous or not, there's still good attack points. He doesn't even live in your fucking district.
When I hear sort of candidates platform, because they're already getting ready for 2018, and talking about challenging some of these.
Yeah, this asshole
Republicans.
Spends 95%.
They talk about their pedigree in Tennessee. They talk about their pedigree of how they grew up here and how they've been here for 20 years and all this other stuff. they do that because it matters to people. I think it's absolute dog shit that it matters to people. But it matters to people,
Well, especially in rural areas. And especially in suburban areas outside of Atlanta where it's traditionally blue. And, I mean, you have this white flight.
Well, it wasn't traditionally blue here. This is
well, no, not us. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about Atlanta and Ossoff. I'm trying to stay on topic.
Okay.
My point is that we're talking about North Atlanta and the suburbs,
right?
Which is traditionally their white flight area of... We're getting away from the urban people and the urban things.
So we're
going to congregate. Yes. Oh,
that's what I was saying. You said blue. So,
yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
you've ever lived in large cities and are familiar with their suburbs and their voting patterns.
I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of D.C.
So
I don't know if that's.
Well, you should still understand to some degree. Well, D.C., the suburbs of D.C. are in different states, but you know what I'm saying. But either way, my point is that like say New Orleans, for example, is a great example of this. Jefferson Parish, for those of you who are familiar, is very red. Very.
I was about to say, is it Jefferson Beauregard Parish?
Might as well be. Particularly Harahan, Kenner, areas like that are so red. I mean,
I get you.
Deep crimson red. You're not going to get rid of it. It's red.
All right.
So you're looking at the same thing in Atlanta. You have this white flight area of people who are trying to escape urban housing and, God forbid, minorities living around them and things like this. And they concentrated their families, their beliefs, their politics outside of that district. So that's what you're running against. So yeah, when they hear the words carpetbagger, guy not from here, partier in college, 30 years old, not ready to hold office. I mean, those things actually have impact on people who might actually be on the fence.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I have facetious counters to that, but I understand how people.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you can logically argue against it all you want, but you have to understand that this isn't logic.
That's
is
the
voting.
Impression that's left among people. Yeah,
voting is not about logic necessarily.
Yeah, and really, I mean, Ossoff again. What I know about Ossoff is only the fatuous negative things that were said about him.
Sure.
Beyond that, all I knew is he was a Democrat, and I wanted him to win.
It was my understanding that he basically parroted Hillary's campaign in 2016.
That there's not really a strong message to working people.
Well, and
that's what it comes down to. Let's get into that, please.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. No, and that's the same thing with. Excuse me. What are we at? 5 now? 5.
I think it's about 5 special elections where
that
Democrats have failed every time.
Yes, and why?
Because we don't have a good message to working people.
Aside from having the first black president, what did you do for success? And following George W. Bush, who is widely considered a failure, even by his own party. It's easy to follow up on the heels of Jackass. I mean, that's what the Republicans did.
It's the counterpunch to Jackass, and now we have counterpunch to what Republicans
on top of that, you had, Jackass, frat boy, basically a dynasty position with George W. Bush. And then your answer is black candidate, young, charismatic, editor of the Constitutional Law Review for Harvard.
Yeah.
Constitutional law professor at Harvard. I mean, you're sitting here looking at his
pedigree. I thought he was just a community organizer.
See,
but that's how they.
But anyway, that's my point, though, is that his pedigree looked gorgeous.
Yeah,
and he's sitting here selling you hope and change.
Right.
And, everybody who's on the fence is like, let's give that black dude a shot.
I did.
And then, and you get the repeat of,
twice, and I don't regret it.
And the Republicans did the same damn thing they did in 2008 with 2012 and regurgitated 2 more boring white people who had nothing to offer aside from we're fiscally conservative and we promise to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And they got the same result.
Right.
So now your voting populace is kind of tired of that bullshit because they didn't really get anything out of it because Obama continued the whole imperialistic thing that Bush and Clinton did before him. And we're not really seeing different results. We just know we're in more debt. And it's a great selling point. Sure. And so you get Donald Trump, the shake-up candidate. The guy who's... he's not a Washington insider. He's going to change everything for the better. You get that, and you're still riding those coattails. I mean, when the Democrats choose to sell their argument as more of the same from the shit that lost in 2016... you're going to get the same result.
Yeah, and this guy, he just didn't sell it. He didn't have anything new or different or, you know. And
same shit. Just because you dumped money into it doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right, you know, and that...
I mean,
and that's the hard admission. You think, oh, well, these seats are bought, essentially. Yeah. Whoever throws the most money at it, is it the Koch brothers or George Soros?
Yeah, and ask New York Yankees fans if you guys are baseball fans. Throwing money at the problem doesn't always guarantee you.
There's
a
gauntlet to throw.
Sorry, I'm just saying.
No, it's cool.
No, throw money at it, please, by all means. And when you are nowhere near to be talked about for the World Series, you only have yourself and your busted ass budget to blame.
Yeah.
Democrats are doing the same thing right now. You guys are embarrassing yourselves.
I will fully admit it. We're embarrassing ourselves right now.
And and just like David mentioned earlier, I mean, where you lost it was the working class.
Yeah. What do working people care about what Asaf has to say versus Handel?
Why the shit do you give a... I mean, what do you care? Sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts on that one.
Go ahead.
I could swear all day long about this, but what do you really think is the appeal to a 30-year-old who doesn't live in the district, who is selling the same shit that Hillary was selling? I mean...
It's just not...
How do you... I mean, you just spend money on it?
It wasn't a blowout. I mean, let's be fair. It wasn't a blowout, but it wasn't enough to truly energize people enough.
No.
And that's what this race was really about. Are people pissed off enough at Donald Trump
to
kick out Republicans for the sake of them being Republicans?
And when you lose by
and
6
guess what?
points,
it wasn't enough.
No, it's not.
It's not enough to
that was the gamble.
Republicans.
That was the gamble with Hillary Clinton too. Yeah. Though, was that it's not Donald Trump. We're going to win.
Yeah.
And you know what? Honestly, I'll admit I bought that shit.
That's where
I bought it hook, line, and sinker.
That's where we have the ideals versus reality. That I can sit here and saying that this is a person who's going to be against Donald Trump, being against his platform, his policies, all this stuff. That should be enough, but it's not. In reality, it's not. In reality, it doesn't play. This is what happens. This has happened now, 5 times? It's not enough.
And
we
it's
need
only been
a better message, guys.
It's been 151 days. 151 days.
Of scandal and idiocy. And it's still not enough.
And it's only getting worse, at least according to mainstream media. Yes, you can argue all day long.
I hate that term. But go ahead.
Sure. But I'm just saying the narrative is that it's only getting worse. And evidence, we don't really have it concretely.
Isn't Spicer interviewing for his own replacement now? Because he's so sick of trying to be the person who's accountable for all this nonsense.
Quick shout out to Bannon, too, for the best rebuttal ever of someone asking him why Spicer is not appearing on camera anymore. He goes, because he got fat. That was funny.
Did Bannon
said that.
Like
Bannon
fat-shamed Spicer?
Yeah, as a joke.
Right,
it was clearly a joke, but the mainstream media ran with it. Like, is he serious? What's the deal? I'm like, come on.
Because you see the clickbait, which I didn't. Because I don't follow clickbait.
He was like, shut the hell up, basically. Yeah. Shout out to you, Steve Bannon.
Don't shout out Steve Bannon.
I'm shouting out Steve Bannon just to say, man, you can't get shit right, but that was funny.
It's kind of funny.
Hey, throw him a bone. Throw him a bone.
I can't throw him a bone. Is it a white bone? That's my. He'll only take it if it's a white bone.
He takes plenty of white bone for Donald Trump. Anyway, so what we really need to talk about,
Democrats, and I'm going to talk to some of you local Democrats too. We need a better message. We need a positive message. We need to engage. We need to appeal to working people. We need to.
There's a litmus test.
Yeah. What do they really care about? Yes, we know they don't really care about like wedge social issues. They care about their bottom line. You know how we're going to do that? Healthcare. That's how we're going to do that.
Oh, see, don't get too far ahead of yourself. I was about to use that as the juxtaposition and say, you know what? As a working class guy, at least
you don't want to get horse fucked on healthcare.
Income, I am getting horse fucked on healthcare.
It's going to be worse.
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for the secret bill that I would love to talk about, guys. Yeah. But we don't know.
We're going to get into
about
that
it so.
Because we wanted to make this a topic because we originally proposed 3 topics for tonight, but because there's so little information on what's going on with the Senate's plan for the healthcare bill because it's behind closed doors. there's supposed to be like 13 white dudes working on it, and some of them don't even know what's happening.
Yeah, I've heard from one of the 13 white dudes apparently came out and said, I don't know what it says. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
One of the guys who's listed as one of the authors. He's like, I don't know what it says.
One of my college professors said it does not fill me with confidence.
Yeah. And so, but anyway.
But we don't know enough to really pontificate about it very much. So we're going to let it for now, and we're going to follow up probably next week when we know more.
What I'm going to tell you, at least from a conservative perspective, if you want to take moderate conservatives like myself and make them vote Democrat again, don't sell it on any of this bullshit like healthcare. Sell it to the working class in general. We're going to take care of you as far as taxes go. We're going to take care of you as far as, planning for our future goes. Don't make it about don't make it about civil rights of fringe classes.
I get that. But I'm saying
there's nothing wrong with standing up for that.
Running on a platform of we don't want you to die because you can't pay for health insurance. That seems like pretty, No,
I understand what you're saying.
You're going to hit,
Sure, but what is
I would hope.
But it only appeals to the leftist fringe and the moderate.
That doesn't sound like a fringe thing. We're talking about with the what is it? The
Republicans are not hearing you, bro. I'm telling you right now, from a libertarian who is just
from the House though, their bill was with the CBO score was saying something like kicking like 24 million people off of health care. Or the
for the majority of us that didn't get it because of the Obamacare thing where we're in the middle class, we don't give a fuck. We're not losing it. We're not keeping it. We're not offered it. We can't afford it. You're missing the middle class. Get serious. Stop worrying about that shit. Yes, you should try to pass it. Yes, you can talk about it. Do not run on it. No one gives a good goddamn. And if they did, Hillary Clinton would have been president by a landslide because she was selling Bernie's plan.
Well, she was hang on a second. She was selling Bernie's plan. That's fine. Yeah, she adopted basically 80% of his platform.
Yeah.
That's fine. But what did Donald Trump say? He said pretty much the opposite of what's happening right now. He said he wanted affordable health care for everybody. He had a very socialist message about health care.
Well,
but what is the legislature doing? The opposite.
The last report we got from Donald Trump said that he felt like the new Senate bill was mean.
So even he's not a big fan of it?
No, he's not. He doesn't even know what it says. And Spicer came out, I guess yesterday or today, saying he has no idea what it says. He hasn't seen it. No one's seen it. We don't know what the fuck is going on, but they're going to force a vote on it in the next week. According to Mitch McConnell, who's not even in the goddamn Senate, but... well, hey.
And you're telling me healthcare is a bad platform to run on?
Yes, it is. Because most of us in the middle class... who are your voting...
Who's most... See, I think you have this problem of not being able to see past the end of your nose/wallet.
No. That's
seriously,
the issue,
though.
Is that I was
You're saying you're a guy that can't afford the health care.
I've become more and more conservative based on this. And I'm telling you right now, most liberal Democrats that I know that are actually in the middle class, that's the last thing they fucking care about.
Is health care?
Yes. Sell it to them. Because... either they have it through pensions, because again, you're dealing with baby boomers. They already have it through retirement or pensions, or they can afford it, or they can't afford it, and it was a pipe dream to begin with. They couldn't afford it before Obama. It got worse under Obama.
For them either
and
way,
now it's making it... and you're trying to sell the same shit and work off the ACA and do this that they got screwed under Obama with. I mean, I'm one of the ones that got screwed by Obama on that. On the back end, mind you. I was happy when the ACA passed because it extended my insurance from 22 to 26.
To 26,
that was awesome. After that, it's not affordable. It wasn't affordable. Even
the exchange is
shit. It still wasn't affordable, and as I make more money, it's definitely not affordable. My point is, don't run on the ACA. You could talk about that. You have ideas.
I didn't say run on the ACA. I said run on healthcare. Run on what the Republicans are doing with healthcare is awful.
Yeah.
Not the ACA is great. I'd be okay with a repeal and replace.
Yeah.
That was a replace, not a repeal and go fuck yourself, America.
Exactly.
And we want to give giant tax cuts to rich people.
I completely agree with you on that.
That's the platform to run on, I thought.
But when you're making it your core concept or something that you argue.
But it's also negative, and I think that's another big problem.
That's what I'm saying, is there's no way for you to actually dig yourself out of the ACA and be like, no, guys, we got it this time.
Yeah, it's not about the ACA. per se at all.
Okay.
Maybe you were assuming. I don't know. Maybe
I wouldn't.
Maybe
I'd leave healthcare.
I wasn't clear enough about that.
I'm saying if you're trying to appeal to the middle class, leave healthcare the fuck out of it for now. I mean, you can make it a side issue or something you talk about saying, no, what we really deserve.
It's hard for me to distance myself from that.
What we deserve is a universal healthcare system or a single payer system. Now. Sure, if you want to sell that liberal message, that's fine. Do not focus on it. It is exploding everywhere. But the reason it's exploding is not because it's not because everybody has different detailed plans we're discussing. What it really is, ACA sucks. We all agree with that. At least the voting populace agrees with it. The majority of voters, they agree.
What we're gonna get,
it should be repealed and replaced. That's the other agreement that the voting populace came up with. And the Republicans have no idea how to do that. They have no fucking clue. They've had 6 years to figure it out, and
Paul Ryan at the helm of this
thing. Yeah, they can't figure it out.
And basically, he wants to do keg stands and give giant tax cuts to his donors.
Well, when Paul Ryan tried it, it didn't work at all
with his dead fucking eyes.
But
anyway.
Anyway,
sorry.
My point is,
I don't like Ryan.
That's okay. My point is that you're not going to get it with that. Don't run on that. Stop running on this socialist message of like, oh yeah, we're going to universal health care everybody.
Socialist I mean, that's extremely reductive. I think
that's also how you're.
I don't want Republicans to destroy the possibility of me being able to afford healthcare. And makes me a socialist.
And your opponents have sold that message, and it is being bought hook, line, and sinker, and you are fucking drowning in it.
Make facts matter again, people.
Sure. I mean, awesome, but I'm still telling you that. Well, even when we get to
facts, it's a hashtag to follow.
Again, we talked about this and we hinted at it. Siobhan and I would discuss universal health care, constitutionality thereof, and
that's a future battle. You guys haven't seen that yet. That's coming out amongst. James has a docket of things people want to beat the living crap out of him over.
Hey, I'm just
and he's willing to take all challengers, and I appreciate him for that.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that on this particular issue, it should not.
So do we want to wrap? Do we want to wrap up on Ossoff and Handel?
Yeah, I guess
Ossoff did not bring the rain because he brought what Hillary bought, and it wasn't enough.
And heads up, Democrats, in case you're not paying attention, no one gives a flying fuck. I'm calling it out there as it is. Hillary Clinton is irrelevant.
It's not enough to run on the Hillary platform. It's not enough to run as anti-Trump. We need a positive message, and right now we don't have one. We don't have one that's reaching people.
And if you want to go backwards, I will point out you had one with Bernie Sanders. People were buying that shit. That could have won you an election hands down. You'd be running everything if you'd have stuck with Bernie Sanders. However, your establishment and everything else did not agree. Your
Neither did Russia.
and then Russia decided they wanted to get involved. But I mean, Jesus Christ, you know, it was like the easiest target on the planet. Hillary Clinton was this giant target of worthless that was just easily to shoot. I mean,
she was a
oh my god,
large slow target.
So
she was on Normandy Beach. She never made it.
Obviously, we disagreed about a few things, but I have a feeling we're going to be semi on the same page for our second topic.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
Philando Castile.
Philando Castile, and we titled this segment "Cops Getting Away with Murder." This was a second.
Inaccurate.
It is inaccurate.
A turn of phrase. It's inaccurate.
Intentional.
Technically, they got away with manslaughter, which is what they really get away with.
Second degree manslaughter. Technically. So I don't know how many people have followed this, but I guess the verdict just came out a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago at this point. Essentially, this Jeronimo Yanez, police officer, and let me qualify this first. I'm not approaching this as a person just because I'm a liberal. That means that I'm anti-cop, that I think cops are a bunch of racists, that they're looking for an excuse to shoot somebody, especially a black person. That
none of that's true.
They're being intentionally discriminatory or anything like that. I think in this case, this Officer Yanez shot Castile 7 times, fired into him, killed him during a traffic stop. I don't think he did it out of any kind of animus or prejudice or anything like that. I think he's a human being that, and I'm just going to say at this point, made a human error essentially. That caused the death of this man, and I don't think it's justifiable.
Would you describe that as culpable negligence?
Yeah, I mean, under the definition of second-degree murder, or second-degree manslaughter. My bad. Not murder, manslaughter. Yeah. I apologize for that. That I believe the officer in this case very much believed his life was in danger. Well, they coach. Okay, I have my carry permit. When I was going through my class, I was told if I was ever had to discharge my firearm, as in to kill another person, that it was very important to point out to anyone and everyone that I thought I was about to die. Those words, I thought I was going to die. And that came out
when you shot at him. What was your intent?
To neutralize the threat.
Oh, you did parrot the words.
I did. Yeah, to neutralize the threat
during your 8-hour
which means
class.
You shoot the hell out of somebody till they're very, very, very dead. And that's what officers are trained to do. If you're going to fire the gun, you are to kill the person. They don't say that ever. It's
because you can't say that because if you have
you can't say that. I understand. You can't say that. That's what it means, but that's not what they will ever say.
And then the difference is are you post certified?
Am I post certified? Considering I don't know what that is, I would say
yeah,
no.
Probably not. Do you have any law enforcement credentials?
No. I was a TSA
screener. Are you familiar with the law enforcement credentials or post certification?
No.
And I'm talking from Tennessee perspective, but each state has their own rules.
Okay.
You're not. You don't know anything about that.
No, if I don't know what it is.
So what you're telling me is the civilian standard for self-defense.
Yes.
Did you know that there is no difference between officers of the law enforcement officers in Tennessee, and across the country, really, on the standard of what is self-defense as far as a lethal shooting goes, in the line of duty or as a civilian, just as a regular person?
No, I think that's an extremely salient point here, because that's essentially the crux of what we're talking about. Is this Officer Yanez, was operating off of this subjective standard of being in fear for his life, that it was his belief. It was that he was going to die,
and
it
let's talk about let's talk about objective standards versus subjective standards really quickly. An objective standard would be what would the reasonable person consider, I guess, to be something that says they're in fear for their life or great bodily harm. What is the reasonable person standard? We can actually look at it and say what is reasonable, what isn't, outside of or inside of a vacuum. I guess you're in a vacuum. You can say, Joe Blow is our reasonable person. What would he consider to be, I guess, threats, an imminent threat to his bodily harm or great bodily harm or to death?
Or his life, yeah.
Yeah. And self-defense in general in common law is adopted by all of our states and is applied to officer-involved shootings as well, is a subjective standard which says, what did the officer feel in the moment? Did the officer feel that his life or great bodily harm was, I guess, there was a threat to his life or great bodily harm in that sense?
Right. Let's put a pin in that just for a second. With regards to the set of people who are not particularly familiar, that we're referring to a traffic stop that ended in a shooting last, I think, July.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, that this guy was pulled over for
quick basics.
The quick basics. He had a tail light out. He was pulled over for this by the officer.
Time of day was twilight, like it was right at not even sunset.
It was getting dark.
It wasn't even dark yet. It was like the sun's going down.
Okay, and the man who ended up being shot, Philando Castile, informed the officer that he had a firearm on him
from the outset. Correct.
Not from the very outset. He asked him for a license.
Well, I mean, the guy didn't walk up to his window and he said, "I got a gun."
No. Yeah, officer walked up, explained why he pulled him over. Your lights out. He explained which one of the lights was out because apparently there's 4 involved. Mm-hmm. And he asked for his license and registration. Produced the license immediately, and then Philando hesitated for a moment, then said, I do have a firearm. I do have a gun."
Did he mention his carry permit? Did he say something along the lines of "I'm licensed to carry it," something like that?
I believe he said he had a license. and
I apologize to my viewers or our viewers on this one.
I
just can't keep watching these videos. I can't do it, and I'll get into that later.
And I'm the other side of the spectrum. I've watched this guy get killed. Listened to the audio of it probably about a dozen times since yesterday, and it's turned my stomach at this point. I don't want to watch it anymore. But he informs him that he has the firearm, and the officer says it's a very rapid succession of events. Officer Yanez says, well, I don't want you to reach for it. And Castile is saying, yeah, okay, I'm not going to reach for it. The last words he says right before he gets shot, because the officer believes he's reaching for his gun at this point. And Castile says, I'm not reaching for it.
Officer then draws the firearm.
Officer draws the firearm and
then
shoots
loads half a magazine into it.
Essentially, yeah, 7 rounds are fired. I believe they all strike Castile. And he dies, I think, pretty much immediately. Anyway, where do we want to go from here? We go to
we can talk about
the interview,
let's, if you want to, I guess, follow it in a timeline.
Sure.
First of all, again, to rehash, just really quickly,
sure.
Castile was pulled over for a taillight beam.
Taillight, absolutely.
Sure. There's a common interaction now. According to Yanez, he smelled marijuana. He saw a small child in the car. He had his girlfriend or whatever in his passenger seat.
In the passenger side, yeah.
And according to Yanez's testimony, he was not listening to commands. I'm just selling it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get factual
and this is extremely important that the Officer Yanez says, don't reach for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the last words from Castile before being shot is, I'm not going to reach for it. I'm not reaching for it. And follow this through to the post-shooting interview, essentially, with Internal Affairs or whoever it is, that Yanez conducts. This is sort of his...
Yes, so the next day...
His report
the next day, apparently, Yanez gives a video-recorded interview with an agency called BCA. And
we don't know what the acronym
I'll explain later why I'm not keeping up with this. But for now, all I know is that the agency is called BCA. He gives what is essentially, at least in criminal law, what we consider from the state's perspective, a confession of sorts. He is advised of his Miranda rights. He's advised that he has the right to counsel, that he has the right to remain silent. He does not have to give this interview. He willfully does so. He signs those rights away. And he basically gives his account of what happened. And again, I have not seen the actual tape. I've read portions of transcripts, things like that. But throughout, he's very iffy in his language. What he says happened.
This is important.
He doesn't really give definite answers.
I definitely have a bone to pick with this whole thing because he was acquitted. First of all, this account never really made it into evidence. That it never.
We'll get there.
Okay,
but let's talk about supposedly.
I'm a layperson. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to say this in the way he's going to correct me on the technicalities. That it never really came out in the prosecution, I guess is a better way of saying it.
The prosecution did not introduce this video into evidence or bring the interviewer as a witness.
Okay, so, but essentially, at no point in this interview, because from the things that at no point did he ever identify that an actual gun was being drawn. He describes Castile as making a C shape with his hand, and he said it was, in his opinion, it was too odd or too large for him to have been reaching for a wallet. That he was suspicious of this, at least. But at no point does he actually describe seeing a gun, because there's a lot of spin of this.
It's very clear that he's not sure.
That he's not sure. He sees the C motion, but he is very clear that he can't really see because it's dark and he can't really see in the car.
He doesn't know.
He claims that he can see the C hand, but not what it was grabbing.
He did make very clear that he was in fear for his life and his partner's life.
Right.
Because he had a partner on the other side of the vehicle, on the passenger side. He made very
clear. I saw the video.
Also, make very clear he was afraid for the life of his passenger and the child in the back too. Said that he was in fear of everybody's lives, his life, everything like that.
Sure.
I mean, he said the magic buzzwords. I neutralized the threat.
I neutralized the threat. I thought I was going to die. I was in fear of my life.
Yep.
I
he said all of the buzzwords, but he never committed to anything as far as
And this is extremely important because at no point and I do have a bone to pick, and again, this is nothing personal against this officer. It's nothing against cops in general. This is about justice, not necessarily what the law says, but actual justice. This man never saw a gun. He presumed a gun, and he killed somebody on the presumption.
He did actually make clear he never saw a firearm once.
Did he?
I don't know.
What I'm saying is, no point anywhere in his testimony he never identified
Castile
a firearm.
Castile volunteered that there was a firearm.
Yes, he volunteered that he had a firearm.
Does Yanez ever once say he saw it?
No.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Is in all the things he said, he never saw a gun. He never said he saw a gun. And this is extremely important because the spin after this by right-wing media and their patent dishonesty, they're showing fuzzy pictures on Castile's body that, oh, this could be a gun, this could be the trigger, if there was a gun, there'd be a really damn clear picture of one, and they would show that he was responding appropriately to a gun being drawn.
Where would the damn clear picture be? The dash cam footage?
Not from the dash cam. They would have taken a photo of the guy as he died.
Oh, you mean with it in his hand? In
his hand or on his lap or anything.
Well, I was going to say...
And apparently part of the same testimony, there was an EMT or something after the fact said they had to reach way down to get the gun. Which means it was never produced at any point during the shooting.
I would love...
Because the narrative being painted here...
I mean, I've got a couple $100 to spare. I'd love to buy a copy of the transcript of this trial just to read to see how it went.
I hope you do. Maybe we can revisit this.
I would love to, because...
But the point being, the narrative being spun in this case is that he wasn't listening, and he was pulling a gun out, and the officer had to shoot him.
And I need you to keep...
And the gun ended up on his lap.
Yeah, okay.
That didn't happen.
Well...
At all.
According to who?
According to everybody.
Well, because we haven't seen the testimony from the trial. I mean, keep in mind that you have 12 triers of fact who are supposedly separated from this. They may have heard media accounts or anything, but they say they're going to do it objectively. We all take their word for it as far as attorneys go, and we let them sit on our jury because we can do everything.
I've said this in other places. I've said this on online, social media stuff. If someone can show me that there was an actual firearm produced in any of this, and it wasn't still in his pocket when Philando died.
Was it in his pocket?
It was on him. They said they had to reach down into some
okay, well,
lower pocket.
That's what I'm trying to say is that, constructive possession does not mean it's actually on his person. Just because it's in his hands.
Explain constructive.
Constructive possession means not necessarily on your person, in your pockets, or in your waistband, or in your shirt, on a shoulder holster, but maybe under your seat in the car.
I don't think it was. I think it was on his person, but not in the pocket.
So he did have the pistol on himself somewhere. That's
my understanding, according to that recorded testimony that an EMT or some person like that.
Yeah.
So that they had to reach way down, as in it wasn't right at hand, but on his person. That's the impression that was left with me. Someone correct me. Come on here and tell me I'm completely wrong on this. That's fine.
Well, first of all, again, it's a subjective standard, so it's not what the truth of the matter is. It's what the officer perceived in that moment.
And this is what we're coming back to as the defense, is that believing saying you believe
and
that
you can sell the
die.
Shit out of that. That's easy.
Yeah.
A subjective standard is very easy to sell. I mean,
because it's subjective. It could be.
It's been almost a year since the arrest happened, or since Castile died.
It's close to a year, I believe, at this point. Yes.
Yeah, he's had time to coach that testimony. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Not
coached.
Not that I'm trying to say that anyone perjured themselves or anything else, but
I will go that far because I'm the raging liberal. No, I'm going to go there.
I guess if I were to try to be objective about it and remove...
During this BCA interview, at no point did he say he saw a gun. As I pointed out earlier, at no point did he say he saw a gun. But during the trial, when he went on the stand, he said he saw a gun.
Okay, well, let's get back to the BCA.
He was reaching for the gun, and that's why he shot him. That's what he said.
Then an important question arises with this BCA interview. You said it wasn't introduced in trial.
Right.
Why not?
Well, I think, I mean, you're actually feeding me back yourself on this one.
Well, sure, and it's
But,
something I've considered, but...
Again, as a layperson, I look at this as a pure caca, because I think what he reveals, or the fact essentially what he admits, because he wasn't sure.
Who's he? Let's...
Yanez. Who else is being interviewed?
Well, sure.
Castile's
So we're talking about
dead.
the interview. Okay.
So we're talking about Yanez being interviewed.
The day after.
The day after. Describes his interactions here. He describes what he thought, what he perceived, not what was actually the case. He never said he actually saw a gun. He never said he was actually pulling a gun. He said he thought, and he wasn't sure, and he couldn't see, and he was reacting to a situation, and he was cussing through this whole thing. Because the guy was freaked out. Because he's a human being, you know, and I don't blame him for that.
And that's why we have the subjective standard for civilians.
Right.
Well, it applies to police officers too, but I mean, yes.
And I get that. So
when your life's on the line,
is at no point does he actually say he actually ever saw a firearm, but when he goes to trial, he says he's pulling a firearm.
So he waives his Fifth Amendment right at trial. He takes the stand in his own defense and says, "Yep, I saw a pistol. He was pulling a gun. I shot his ass."
He probably didn't say it like that, but yes.
Well, I'm asking. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, if you want me to parse a transcript again, we'll set up a PayPal account. Everybody can donate. You can, I'll buy a copy of the transcript. I'm happy to copy it 1,000 times.
We've got a Patreon account on the way. By the way,
if you would like to pay,
once we start to get famous.
If you would like to do that, I'm happy to post a Scribd account or something that will actually put the entire transcript of the trial online, if you want it. But I'm asking, like, I don't know, because again, I don't follow this, and we'll get into that in closing. But to understand,
you're saying, but to go back to the point about why did this not enter in with the prosecution?
Yeah, then that's what I'm wondering.
Tell me why, because it looks to me like a bonehead move.
I've had this discussion with a friend of ours as far as admissibility. The friend we were talking about does not practice criminal law regularly. I do. I would say that I've never, ever.
Okay, but tell me why didn't this happen?
It looks like in my opinion, it should have been admissible. It should have been a matter of it's a confession of sorts. You have a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate yourself, but if you waive that right and you make these admissions
by taking the stand, essentially,
exactly. Well, not even taking the stand, but giving the interview in the first place with law enforcement.
Okay.
Say you're suspected of a crime, just like this, and you're basically told, we would like to conduct an interview with you. Would you agree to do it? You say yes. You go there. They're going to read you your Miranda rights. They're going to say you have the right to remain silent. They're going to explain that and tell you you don't have to do this interview. Then they're going to say you have the right to have counsel present. Again, if you don't want to have this interview without counsel, you don't have to do it. Then they're going to say if you can't afford counsel, one will be appointed to you, and they'll give you the same spiel.
As part of the
and they'll ask you, are you willing to waive those rights and give a statement? You say yes. They're going to say, okay, here's the document you're about to initial each right you just waived and sign at the end saying, I fully understand. I am waiving all Fifth Amendment rights that I possibly have here. I'm willing to talk to you. I understand it's going to be used against me. Boom. It's admissible. I mean, you can make arguments, I guess, against probative value, blah, 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 blah. And if you really want to get into that, feel free to go to our Facebook
probative
page.
Value, by the way, because I got to unpack the jargon for lay people like myself. And you explained it to me before the show, but people listening to probative, what the hell is that?
There's one general rule of admissibility, and I don't know what the actual Minnesota criminal evidentiary rule is, but
generally speaking, probative value is what?
The federal rules. General admissibility is evidence is admissible when it's relevant and when the probative value of it outweighs its prejudicial burden, basically. So what that means is probative value means does it go to proving one of the elements or truths of the matter asserted, and its prejudicial effect is essentially when it turns around, is it something that may prove a fact but it makes the defendant look terrible and he's not taking the stand, so does it violate his Fifth Amendment rights to some degree against self-incrimination?
Gotcha.
So in this situation, he's waived all of his Fifth Amendment rights. I mean, and I cannot I can't imagine this interview was conducted without him explicitly waiving those rights in a written format.
Gotcha.
I mean,
So it's dead to rights.
That's standard practice for every crackhead or anybody brought in for an
He's
interview.
in here basically telling on himself.
Yes, and so the prosecution standpoint should be, judge, if someone tries
and he's
to
being
argue,
honest. And again, this isn't ooh, I got you, bastard. This guy's being honest about what happened.
Yeah.
And to me, there's something admirable in that. And I understand the way lawyers play this game. And it's not nothing against lawyers.
No, it's
how
okay.
you do what you do.
I mean,
you know, but this guy is going on the record, being honest that he did what he thought was right in that situation. You know, and I don't, I don't fault him for it. I don't hate him for it. None of this.
Well,
but the fact remains, this guy essentially told on himself in this situation by describing never seeing a gun. You know,
well, and that would be the prosecution standpoint. If someone were to challenge the probative value versus the prejudicial effect, if I'm on the prosecution, I'm going to say, look, this confession all the way through is a confession. He's saying that he never saw a gun. Confession. It goes directly to the point that he killed this person, and it's meeting our second-degree manslaughter elements of was he culpably negligent. And I'm going to say, he never saw a gun. He's admitting to that.
He had a thought process that was subjective,
and he voluntarily waived those rights. And anyway, so it would have been admissible on the prosecution's point. But here's and we're beating a dead horse on that end. But let's get,
and they didn't because
that's what I was going to say is that apparently the prosecution neglected to bring the interviewer in as a witness and introduce the evidence of the actual video of this interview. For whatever reason they wanted to, and I'll unpack that for a second. But on cross-examination, they wanted to introduce the evidence. Again, they wanted to bring the video in. And the judge shut it down because it wasn't brought out. The judge shut it down and said, look,
during the
you carry the burden. You have the case in chief. You didn't bring it up. You never introduced the evidence. You certainly can't use it on cross-examination against the defendant because he took the stand. Now, the question then becomes, was the prosecution, I guess, lackluster or negligent for not bringing the evidence in to really bolster their case? And I'd say it could go either way. The problem is that according to the limited transcripts we've seen, Castile was dead. Yanez addressed all of these subjective standards. I felt in fear of my life. I felt in fear of everybody else's life. I thought I perceived a threat. All of these things, even though he says I didn't see a gun, the question becomes, the state has to prove their case. They have the burden of doubt, or they have the burden of proof. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this crime actually happened by every element. And when it comes down to it, if you're going to prove your case in point, you have to put on witnesses as the state, and you get to go first. Basically, the defense gets to cross-examine all of your witnesses, but you have to ask them direct questioning and get direct testimony out of it. So if you're going to do so with this video, you bring the interviewer in, you put the interviewer on the stand, you lay foundation and say, did you happen to have a chance to interview Officer Yanez? Yes. You basically corroborate the fact the interview took place and say, was there a video recording of it? Interviewer says, yes, there was. You say,
this is how you would have introduced it.
Exactly. That's how you introduce it. And you say, does this look like a copy of it to you? Just identification value. Like, is this your case number? Yeah. Is this your signature? Yeah. This disc I'm holding in my hand. Interviewer says, yes.
Would you please bring it in? Yeah,
of course. Okay, it's a long process. But you bring it in. You play it. Unfortunately, when you do that, the defense counsel now gets a chance to cross-examine your interviewer and gets to attack everything. So while you're trying,
that's the rub. Is it worth it? Yeah.
And that's where it comes in. Is as the prosecution, is it worth it to open this door for defense counsel in the middle of your case in chief, and pardon my French, to cut your nuts off? I mean, you're trying to sell this guy as a cop who acted outside of the bounds of the law, who acted, I guess, negligently. Is the first element in a culpable manner, took someone's life in a way that was not reasonable at all. Killed Philando Castile with no justification. And here comes this defense attorney who's well paid, who knows what the hell he's doing, his seasoned veteran.
Sure.
in the middle of your case in chief while you're showing a video clip of the defendant explaining himself, and he's slaughtering you, saying, well, wait a minute. Didn't he just say he was afraid for his life? Yes. Didn't he just say that he thought he saw a gun? Yes. I mean, you can beat it up all day long to where your jury is sitting there going, well, yeah, I mean, I see what he's saying. And it takes all the wind out of the sails of the prosecution. So I understand the prosecution's standpoint of not introducing it. Should they have introduced it? Yeah, in my opinion, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's my
however
layperson, but that's my.
But however, I do fully understand.
It's damning enough that a decent prosecutor could have weathered that storm, essentially.
Yes. Well, and exactly.
That's what it comes down to.
If you went hard enough as a prosecutor,
yeah.
If you really went at it hard enough with enough zeal, yeah, you could have weathered that storm. But if you're going to be cautious, which is, let's face it, what half of prosecutors do is being cautious. If you're going to be cautious, you don't introduce that testimony. You hope that you can sell it on everything else. You don't need that because you're giving the defense a chance to attack the heart of your argument with self-defense on cross-examination, right in the middle of what
based
you're trying to sell the jury.
Exactly,
yeah. And they don't even have to sell it as a subjective standard because it's not their time to sell it.
It's a shifting goalpost, essentially.
It's not even their time to sell it. It's their time to plant reasonable doubt and get you thinking about that subjective standard. So when they bring it out later, when the defendant takes the stand and corroborates everything that you just argued because he sat there and watched you do it.
Yeah, and what this comes back to, essentially, is this is how the lawyers play with it. This is this is why maybe the prosecution didn't introduce it, why maybe they should have. This is what the defense could have done about it to riddle it all full of holes. But what it comes down to is it sounds very much like this guy was not he did not have knowledge of an actual threat. He had belief of a threat.
Which is enough under the
subjective standard according to the law. And what this comes down to is a guy died who didn't need to. And it wasn't because he wasn't following directions. And it wasn't because he was a bad dude. Or any of those things.
It wasn't because he posed a threat.
It wasn't because he posed a threat. It was because the officer was scared and he was acting out of fear. Somebody died. They didn't have to die. And we look at this. We on the left, essentially, we the not always giving cops the benefit of the doubt type demographic are looking at this like this isn't justice. Maybe this is what the law says. Maybe the law says it's okay, but is this justice? Is this justice to the Castile family? Is this the kind of thing? And I hear this so many times. Cop shoots a black guy. The presumption. This is where this
black
kind
guy
of shit.
Or black child or black person, because it seems to go all of those directions.
Black person.
I mean, Tamir Rice was 12.
I don't know that. I don't know he was that young.
I mean, just as an example.
Okay, black person, but especially black
male.
Yeah, black male.
No matter the age,
because it's more scary, right? Black person gets shot by a cop. The presumption at this point, and I've heard this, and this is where BLM comes from. This is where Black Lives Matter comes from, and people, I know a lot of people, especially on the right, cannot stand Black Lives Matter. They think it's racist and all this other stuff. This is where they come from. A black person gets shot by a police officer. The presumption is there will be no justice. Not what the law says, but there will be no actual justice when it's an unjustifiable shooting. On this, you can argue it's because of this subjective standard.
Sure.
You can argue that it's institutionalized racism. There's vectors for all this. There's aspects.
I think I would argue both. But
right.
I would,
I would
there's
argue
some
more. Column A, some column B. It's the presumption that nothing good is going to happen. There's going to be no change. That if you're a black person, that my people are going to continue to die and nobody gives a shit because the system is set up to protect the people who do this, and it's not because they're doing it out of animus.
But But the question then becomes, why are they doing it? What is the threat perceived? Why is there a threat?
Let's talk about the spin that happened right after this. by conservative treehouse and all the right-wing garbage sites who described Castile as a suspect in an armed robbery, who offers say that he matched the description because he had a wide nose. Does that not sound overtly racist to anybody but me? Like,
was that their only?
That's what I've.
That was the only relation to the armed robbery.
Bore a resemblance. Also had a wide. That was a point alighted on.
Nothing about vehicles matching.
I didn't hear anything about
hairstyle.
Again, somebody please correct me. That he had the same sort of general appearance as this, and then of course.
So he's black.
Again, he was black. He was a black guy.
I mean, I don't want to draw that conclusion, but that's what it sounds like.
That if you go to the right-wing sites that posted articles right after this happened, they've got side-by-side pictures of Castile and somebody committing an armed robbery in a grocery store, or convenience store, or something, and trying to say, oh, they kind of look the same, and then they have the blurry pictures of the waist belt of him after he's died, and it's like, oh, is this a gun? Maybe this is a gun, and
I do vaguely remember that. I don't.
And some people claiming to have seen higher resolution pictures, but they can't remember because it's been a year, and it's all very vague. But it's enough. It's enough for people who already believe that narrative that he was doing something wrong or that he was a bad guy, and it's open and shut because at the end of the day, the cops are us. And we want them to come home. So if somebody has to die for that to happen...
Yeah, obviously we want the people who protect us to come home safely. Like,
of course, and I do too.
That's a no-shit answer. Yes. The people who get paid pennies on the dollar to protect us, we want them to be safe.
And they absolutely don't get paid enough. They don't get trained well enough. None of this shit. There are so many failings on that side of it. And I have empathy. I really do. But when something like this happens, it's not justice. When... We cannot come together as...
How is it not justice? I mean, I want you to spell that out.
Okay, that's fine. I got stuck for a second. I was like, how do you mean it's not justice? The guy killed a dude who didn't have to die based on his fear and not on reality.
Okay.
That's not justice.
Let's revisit with the Minnesota statute.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is this is separate from what the actual law says.
Well, yes.
There's what the law says and there's what's justice, as in the ideal of justice.
No, but
justice is not being served.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't watch the trial. I don't know. I can tell you that from my own personal experience...
You probably see a lot of not justice happening.
Yeah, and I could also tell you that when I was a prosecutor, I'm pretty fucking zealous and pretty serious about the law.
I wish you were on this case, my friend.
I'm saying that if I went to trial as a prosecutor, it was because I was going to win. There was no in between. It wasn't a question of, well, will he or won't he? It was either.
But these are high-profile cases,
and
right?
this is a high-profile case.
So it's going to go to trial.
Yeah.
Right? I mean that's, much, the propensity is that it's going to go to trial.
Sure. And if I'm going to trial on it, I'm going to win it.
Right.
I mean, that's my goal. That's what I want. Now, the reason
however,
I brought that up...
But yeah, I know, because I know what you want to do.
Because I want to talk about second-degree manslaughter in Minnesota and what the elements are. I mean, that's what I want. And really, what the statute says is killing someone else by the person's culpable negligence, whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances of causing death or great bodily harm to another. If you break it down into the three elements that are, it's defendant's culpable negligence, and that's its own question. Was he negligent, and was that negligent culpable, meaning that he actually was so negligent that you should subscribe intent to him to some degree, recklessness or wanton negligence.
Yeah, it's enough disregard for essentially the law at that point that it's considered culpable.
Exactly. Yeah. Or really a disregard for that person's life.
Right.
Without a threat, I guess. But so your second element is did he create an unreasonable risk? And you have to prove your third element. Did he take a chance that caused death or great bodily harm? I mean, when you're breaking down these three elements, all of them together, the answer seems pretty damn obvious to me.
But that runs up against the subjective standard of I was scared, I thought I was going to die.
Exactly. And then again, I mean, I think this really just comes down to how hard do you prosecute? I mean, how do you pull out your big guns? I mean, do you really seriously take this seriously?
That's a good thing to segue to, because
study up
how hard do you pull out those big guns when you're a prosecutor? Because who do prosecutors work with on a day-to-day basis?
The police.
The police.
In their jurisdiction.
In their jurisdiction.
And most of the prosecutors are assistant prosecutors who are employed by an elected official who works with another elected official who runs law enforcement. I mean, these are people who have to show to their constituents that they're getting results, they're doing justice, they're doing the right thing.
Essentially, they have very close ties with...
And how do your constituents...
With the person they're prosecuting in this...
Exactly.
You know, in this particular case, I don't know if the prosecutor particularly knew Yanez, but they know the cops in this.
And that's true
in this area.
And honestly, again, I can't follow these anymore, and I'll go ahead and explain that really quickly. In the last 10 years or so, black men, especially either boys, men, however you want to define them, have been killed unarmed by police to a number that's, if it hasn't hit 24, it's getting close. Not one conviction has been gotten by the prosecution in any state or federal or anything of that nature.
Right.
And these are after charges were brought. And these are after charges were brought by either a grand jury or an investigating body.
Which means they determined there was sufficient of evidence to have a
trial
trial about
it. Yes, exactly. To arrest someone.
And the counter to that, the counter I can already hear banging around is, well, that just shows that officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and, if they were let off, that's justice, right?
Sure. And my counter to that is the question of, when is protecting and serving, when you're talking about people who are unarmed, and I mean, you could obviously refine this to people who have not actually committed a real serious crime outside of a B misdemeanor or something like a tail light out or something like that, or anything of that nature. But when is protecting and serving, I guess, served? By killing someone who's unarmed, and there's a question, even a question of whether or not they provoked it. And understand that when a probable cause determination is made by a grand jury, by a magistrate, by a judge, anybody who signs an arrest warrant or issues an indictment, that means it is more likely than not that a crime was committed. And in every one of these situations, that crime is a homicide. Someone's life was taken. Whether it's manslaughter, murder, or something in between, negligent homicide. I mean, it ranges across the board. But there has been a probable cause determination by the justice system that is more likely than not that you took this person's life illegally. And this has happened dozens of times in the last 10 years on high profile level. Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know how to research it.
And I think every time has there been a conviction?
No, not one. Not one conviction.
And at some point,
not as far as a black victim goes.
Right.
So I mean, you can understand this fuel that Black Lives Matter has.
Sure.
And whether you look at it as a racist organization, or that you think they're off message, or their protests are wrong, or destroying property, vandalism.
I mean, I think they definitely have a problem with their message.
Sure, and I don't give a damn about any of that, but you can understand the core element.
Where the core element of where this comes from, I am absolutely on board with.
We don't get justice.
It's fucking horseshit. It's not justice,
And I'll be honest with you, again, I don't think it's a matter of whether or not cops are racist or what's going on there. I think it's bullshit to use the civilian subjective standard for self-defense.
Absolutely.
For officers of the law. If you can't train them properly, if you can't actually establish an objective standard they are held to that is higher and above than the civilian self-defense standard.
And it's super sad to me, and this is Monday morning armchair quarterback shit, that if I was an officer doing a traffic stop and someone identified to me that they had a gun and they seemed scared and nervous and a little bit freaked out.
Get out of the car.
I would talk to this person, say, listen, this is what we're going to do. And I would talk them through it. We're going to go real slow with everything.
Get out of the car.
Yeah.
get out of the car slowly, show me your hands, move away from it,
right.
now tell me where the firearm is.
There's a right and
now
wrong
I'll
way
retrieve the firearm.
To coach somebody where you're not having to use force.
And do you understand why I'm telling you already what the map is for that?
Because it's already established.
Because I've already seen it thousands of times.
Sure, yeah.
Thousands of times. As a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor, I've seen it thousands of times. That's how you conduct a stop when someone tells you they have a firearm.
Yeah.
Stop what you're doing. Place both hands on the steering wheel. Get out of the car
right.
very slowly. Show me your hands.
Yeah.
Step away from the vehicle.
Right. And this,
where is
this
the
is what
firearm?
I want you to do.
I will retrieve it.
Either get
I
out of
will
the car.
unload it. I will unlock it.
Or just off the top of my head. Hey, this is what I want you to do, buddy. Put both your hands on the steering wheel. Let's do that, and I'm going to walk you through every single thing I want you to do. There's no ambiguity. Don't reach for it.
And I think, the problem here is also...
And these vagaries that are involved.
And what's never really discussed here, and I think a main issue is, when you're a civilian using the subjective standard, if someone is threatening your life and you honestly were not the aggravator or the person who actually started it, so to speak, you're on the defensive.
Sure.
Someone's threatening you. You didn't start it. You don't know what's going on. In a traffic stop situation, the officer started it. And I don't mean to sound that officers are threatening or anything like that, but the point is, even as a law-abiding citizen, a normal human being, who's never done anything wrong, has no criminal record, never been arrested, never been accused of a crime, when you see the blue lights behind you when you get pulled over, how do you feel?
Yeah,
you're nervous.
Yeah.
You're scared. I mean, you don't know what the hell's going on.
I can totally see because I'm a more recent gun owner, carry permit holder. If I've got a gun on my person or a gun in the car, I get pulled over for something, I am going to be nervous. I'm going to be like, I need to show this cop that I'm legally holding this gun. My first thought is, yes, license, registration, show him the permit, show him the permit. Make sure he knows that, I'm on his team, essentially, that I'm not trying to do nothing nefarious. I'm not trying to scare him.
I got to stop you right there.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the cops are never on your team.
No, I know that. I'm talking about what my thought process is going to be.
I know what your thought process is, and I'm telling you it's wrong, and this generally leads people to get shot. If your firearm is concealed somewhere in your vehicle, like in a center console,
right,
or somewhere like that, especially if it's in your glove box with your registration and your insurance.
That's a bad place to put it, by the way.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, assuming it's there, if it's concealed out of sight, you have no duty to tell that officer you're armed, and you should not. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that right now. That's not legal advice. That's personal advice. But you are always a suspect when you're being pulled over. You've done something wrong. By the way,
do not take legal advice from a podcast.
This is not legal advice.
This does not form my attorney-client relationship.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
so if something bad happens, it's not his fault.
When you're being pulled over...
Covering the ass.
Yeah, well, whatever. But when you're being pulled over, you're suspected of wrongdoing. And you have to understand that the officer's always on the defensive. I mean, he wants to go home at the end of the day.
Sure.
And he's on red alert every time he walks up to that window. Now, whether or not he's a young buck and he's got a hand on his pistol butt or whatever is another story, but he still is looking at you and expecting you to do something wrong. I mean, it's just kind of a heightened alert, a sense of we're ready to react.
Sure.
If you don't have to involve that firearm in it, personally, I wouldn't.
Don't bring it up.
I mean,
because that goes against what I was taught in my
but
class.
I mean, again, look at Philando Castile.
You turn on the dome light.
Yeah.
You put your hands on the steering wheel.
Always turn the dome light on. By the way, if you're pulled over at night, please turn the dome light on, just so they are not confused about shadows.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's sad that we even have to talk about this.
And you wait for whatever those instructions are.
And you follow those instructions to a goddamned T.
No. And again, in Castile, people will say that he wasn't, and he was disobeying. That's garbage. I think his thought process was he just told the cop he has a gun. He's obviously not dumb enough to reach for it.
I wouldn't think so.
Right.
But again, you have to look at
the subjective standard. And his last words alive were, "I'm not reaching for it."
I know. And again, I'm going to tell you, like I just said, as I can win this on the prosecution side, I could also win it on the defense side. I also could have made Yanez walk. I mean, it is a borderline case.
And
the problem with that isn't
sort of an indictment.
It isn't a matter of justice. The problem is the fact that we let officers use the civilian subjective standard, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
What's the point of training you? Why are you walking around with a gun and putting your nose in everybody's business and actually exciting people? I mean, you're scaring people. That's when the blue lights come on, you frighten someone.
Right. That's the idea, the shock and awe.
There should be some
freezes you into
standard.
inaction.
I mean, there should be some different standard as far as justifiable homicide goes for law enforcement officers.
But we wanted, I mean, as a society, as people who, pull those levers of power, they want to take it easy on these individuals. That's why this is happening.
Well,
this is where BLM comes from.
We want to take it easy on them to some degree because we do want them to come home. We do not want them
to feel absolutely. I get that.
But, my God, people's lives are involved. I mean, and not just that, but constitutional rights, their liberty, the entire American dream, their entire ability to fucking breathe, procreate, live, anything is involved. And people are dying.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the bone I'm picking.
So
and
if you're wondering why I talked about why I can't keep up with these cases anymore, that's why.
Because it's depressing.
It's there's never a victory for the prosecution. And it always makes me wonder.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes me wonder where the case is prosecuted.
Strong drinks before even talking about this because I watched those videos. I watched the Facebook video right after the shooting. I watched the dash cam video like a dozen times. Listened specifically to what people had to say. Castile and the officer and everything else. Like that whole thing. When you watch a person get shot, or at least see from the side a person getting shot, a dozen times, it has an effect. It's horrible.
I just can't, I can't do it.
Man died. He didn't have to die.
Yeah. I really.
And again, it's not to demonize the officer. It's not to paint him as some horrible criminal, bad person, anything else like that. He's a flawed human making a very human error.
I feel like the issue is that training is woefully inadequate.
Yeah.
And I think the standard is woefully inadequate. I mean, you have an awesome responsibility. You are injecting yourself into people's lives.
And you're giving not enough training.
Lives,
and it pays crap.
And you are causing aggression just by
being your job. Yeah.
You're the one that's putting everybody on the defensive. They sped. They had a tail light out. Something. But a tail light out is not a death sentence.
Right.
And it shouldn't even reasonably get close to that.
No. Absolutely.
And this idea that's just part of the job is bullshit.
No, it is. There needs to be a better way for all of this.
Now, there's got to be a room forward.
We're failing our people and we're failing our officers at the same time.
I think so too.
Maybe the message
I don't believe
that
if you justifiably shot someone, you should not be charged with crimes. You shouldn't be going through this. You shouldn't lose your job. I mean, Yanez was fired and is not allowed to work in law enforcement in the state of Minnesota anymore because of that.
Despite the fact he was acquitted.
But he was acquitted. He didn't do anything wrong.
So he's
supposed to be innocent until
according
proven guilty.
To the law, he didn't do anything wrong.
He's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
But isn't that telling though of the reality?
It is.
That he will never want to be on the beat probably ever again.
He can't be in Minnesota. He's been banned.
And people will not ever want to be around a department that has him on the force.
And that is telling, and that's upsetting to me, is that the police department's own reaction is, we don't want him around us, he kills people. Or he's bad, he's bad news in general.
It's absolutely going to be bad blood for this community. And we're mitigating that by
but he's innocent.
Rid of
but
him.
he's innocent. He never did anything wrong. And we proved him innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. But he can't have this job, and he can't do any of these other things. You're doing a disservice to your officers. You're doing a disservice to the justice system. You're doing a disservice to the law. The standard has to change.
It's a disservice to justice. And that obviates it. The fact that he cannot work as an officer.
The standard has got to change. It has got to become more stringent for officers to pull firearms on people. Period.
Absolutely.
And
we want them to be safe. No one's saying that any of these guys should, catch a bullet over,
But you show me one officer who has been railroaded and convicted of any homicide for doing something questionable as far as, I guess, unjustified force or justified force goes.
It really never happens.
At least in the last 10 years, it has not happened. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
No one's been convicted. And I mean, again, we're talking high-profile cases that are very questionable. No one's been convicted.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs.
I get it on a civilian standard, but I don't for officers.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep watching these videos. I don't want to keep hearing these stories because I know how they end.
I disgusted myself in the last 24 hours.
I know how they end. They end the same way every time. Officer walks free. Officer gets tarred and feathered. Officer's reputation is ruined. Right. Officer is acquitted and proven innocent.
This is where...
everybody knows it's different.
This is where the discord comes from. I mean, this is the patient zero kind of situation of why these communities do not trust their policing. And this is where riots come from.
I mean, this is how you get riots, but yeah,
I think we've hemmed and hawed enough about it.
Yeah, I do too.
And I'm thoroughly depressed and ready for another drink.
Yep, heard that.
Yeah. But I think you guys know our thoughts pretty well. If you think we're wrong, if you think we're saying dumb crap, and we, need to check ourselves or
and I would
take a seat.
I would love any counter.
Absolutely, we welcome criticism.
I mean, this is a very touchy subject to me because it's what I do for a living, and it's near and dear to my heart on both sides of when I was a prosecutor and trying to protect my officers, and as a criminal defense attorney and seeing what happens to my clients. I mean, it goes back and forth for me. So, if you have anything...
So, on that cheerful note, Democrats fail at everything, and...
cops get away with murder.
And cops get away from murder.
Yeah, obviously that was a
not
joke.
Murder,
that was an attention-capturing headline.
But, that's how clickbait works, guys.
No, cops get away with second-degree manslaughter in the case of Philando Castile.
It doesn't roll off the tongue as well, does it?
No, it really does.
So here we are with murder.
Democrats did fall flat on your fucking face, though. You guys pick it up seriously.
We did. We were unsuccessful in buying the election that the Republicans bought, to include Donald Trump.
Oh my God, that was a wonderful admission from a liberal. You guys can't buy elections, no.
No, we're not as good at it.
No, no you're not.
So, with that said,
we are Fermenting Opinions.
We are Fermenting Opinions. I am your host, David Papiden.
I'm your co-host, James McVeigh. I'm pleased that you listened to us bloviate on this bullshit.
Yeah, and this has been a depressing, ugly episode.
Yeah, it has.
But
thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you for bearing with us. Please check us out. We are on Facebook. We have our YouTube channel, Fermenting Opinions. Our host is the amazing and talented Ross Janes with rossjanes.com. I think it might just be janes.com now. I think he changed it.
No,
I'll have to verify with him. But our man Ross Janes, he helps make all this possible, so we always give a shout out.
I've heard
as often as we're sober enough to remember to do so. Anyway,
I've heard a rumor that we're going to have a Twitter handle too, but I refuse to believe it yet.
I hate Twitter, but
Me too.
It may help because we have a message. We want people to hear what we have to say. We want people to tell us why we're wrong, so we can have reasonable conversations about whether or not we are.
Well, I believe that does fulfill our byline, does it not?
Yeah. We're going to go find a little bit more of a palatable ferment than this conversation tonight.
Yes, please, God.
And so that's going to be us over and out. You guys have a good night.
Yes, indeed.
Take care.